Well, like Renee said, my name is Brian Daigle. I'm with Idea Tango. So we're going to be talking about market research and how you guys can make sure your product, when you get to the point where you're ready to sell it, that it's going to sell and make you some money. We're going to talk about the reasons why you do market research. We're going to talk about two main types of market research, and that's secondary market research. That's how your product fits into the environment, your industry, competitors, things like that. We're going to talk about primary market research, which is when you actually take your product and ask someone, what do you think about my product? What would you do to make it better? That's primary market research. And then I'm going to end with something about testing your sales to give you a better idea of if your product will succeed in the marketplace. Now, I need to warn you, I'm glad everyone's sitting down for this next slide, because it might be a little scary, just on first glance. MIT study said that 97% of patents are not commercially viable. Federal Trade Commission, the FTC, did a study. 99% of inventors fail. Now, what is the number one reason that came out of these studies and other ones that show, for the majority of people, unfortunately, they can't get over that hurdle? The number one reason is because they don't do their market research up front. They think maybe in some cases too much about patenting. Well, patenting is good to think about up front, but then again, it's not the only thing to think about. You want to make sure your product will sell, and that it will sell for a price that will make you a profit. Because if you don't make a profit, you're not going to be in business too long. So, and this is not meant to be a doom and gloom story, but I want to catch your attention and make you realize how important market research is for inventors. So the number one reason you do market research is to prove to yourself and prove to other people that when your product gets out there, it's going to succeed. You can find out if people will like your product, or if they have ideas on how to improve it, functionality, design, things like that. You'll discover whether people will buy your product, which is, of course, what you ultimately want them to do. You're going to discover how many people will buy. Not everyone is your customer. Maybe you're focusing on moms who have children ages 2 to 5, or you're focusing on single fathers, or you're focusing on kids, or whatever the case is. How many people are in your target market? Are you looking in the U.S.? You're looking internationally? That, of course, will affect it too. You'll also discover price points when you're doing your market research. So you make sure you have the profit margins to cover your overhead, to cover manufacturing costs, to cover the cost of attorneys, to cover the cost of your prototype, and all that stuff. You need to make sure your price will cover that. And lastly, you'll be able to test some of your strategies and see what works and what doesn't. Ultimately, you do market research because there are two directions you can go with your product. You can license it, or you can build a business around it. Either way, you're going to have market research to prove that your product will sell. If you license it, if you take your product to Procter & Gamble, you need to prove to them that it's worth their time to sell or to license the product from you. So you have to have market research. You have to say, this is what it's going to sell for. I've done surveys. I've done focus groups. You have to have that information for them. If you're going to build a business around it, you want to have market research, because when you go and start advertising, or you start going to trade shows, you want to make sure you're going to the right trade shows, or you're advertising in the right magazines, because it's expensive to advertise. So you want to make sure you're focusing in on your customers. So that's ultimately why you want to do market research. Some other reasons market research helps. When you're doing assessments, you can figure out how to improve your product. That, of course, impacts your design and how you design your product. If people don't like your design, you're going to have to change the design. When you're going and getting your patent protection or trademarks, market research will tell you how other competitors have protected theirs, what people generally do in the industry. I think one of the speakers, Danielle, was saying for toys or for novelty, the industry really doesn't worry too much about patents, or they get patents less than other industries because the product cycle is so short. So that's going to affect how you do your intellectual property, and of course in your marketing. And some other soft benefits of doing your market research, and that is it's going to get you to start thinking less like an inventor. Thinking like an inventor is a good thing. I'm an inventor. We're all inventors in here. But you also, if you want to be successful, you have to think like a business. And that's proving proving everything with numbers, with data, with hard facts, and not just gut feels. So it's going to help you think like a business. And when you go talk to people about licensing your product, you're going to be able to throw out lingo and acronyms like return on investment, ROI, or what's the conversion rate of purchases, or how much shelf space does this take up, and things like that. So you're going to be able to speak the lingo of your industry. And really, what market research is going to do, it's going to help you save money in the long term. Because we all have lots of ideas, lots of products, right? I mean, we don't have just one. Maybe we're focusing on one, but we're creative people. We have lots of ideas. The goal with market research is to use it and pick the best one, or the one that's most likely to succeed. And when you use market research, you're not going to be one of the 3% or you're not going to be the 97% that fail. You're going to be one of the 3% that succeed, because you're going to increase your chances immensely by doing just a little bit of research up front. So the two main types of research to think about, and these, when I'm going through these, we created this presentation really for something that you can take home and go do yourself. This is stuff when we started our business, when people are starting businesses, these are things that people are doing themselves. They don't necessarily have to pay someone thousands of dollars. You can if you have the resources to do that, but these are things you can do yourself. There are two types of research really to consider, and that is primary and secondary research. And I mentioned secondary research is thinking about the environment in which your product is in. What does the industry look like? Who are the associations? Who are your competitors? And what are they selling competing products? What are they selling them for? So you can get some pricing information. Primary research, on the other hand, is your product, how to make it different. You have this pen, what would you do to improve it? More gel around the place where you hold it, or maybe you stop that clicking sound so it's a silent click pen, or whatever it is. That's primary market research. So first, because usually the first step in doing research is to start with secondary research because it's more available, it's lower cost. So I'm going to start off talking about secondary research. So ways you can do secondary research. There are research reports you can go out there and buy. There are industry reports, general trends in the industry, whether it's the toy industry or it's the bakeware industry or whatever, the sports apparel industry, whatever it is, there's industry trends out there where people are saying what the trends are, is it, doing well in the economy, is it not doing so hot. Secondary research, competitive analysis. Go out there on the internet, look at your competitors, find out what they're selling their products for, what do they do good, what do they do something where you can maybe improve upon. So what are ways you can do primary? Again, this is focusing on your product, you're getting feedback on your product. You can survey consumers. Usually you want to survey several hundred if you want any statistically significant data. You can create focus groups of 8 to 10 people where you ask them about their product, what do they think about it, would they buy it, do they have friends that would buy it, those sorts of things. And then one-on-one interviews are kind of like focus groups, but one-on-one.